Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me on today's Job Setup and Budgeting Process webinar. My name is Jade Leal, and I will be leading it today. If you have any questions during the webinar, please go to the tool on the webinar and ask questions using the control panel, and they will be addressed at the appropriate time by one of our team members. Please keep in mind that during the session, all attendees are muted. So what we will be covering in today's webinar is the JDE address book and job hierarchy, as well as how to set up a job in JDE, and then give you guys an understanding on the budgeting process as a whole. And from there, we'll review budgeting revenue and labor details specifically. And from there, we'll review how your jobs and your job budgets tie into Hubble and the monthly labor forecast dashboard that you guys are usually reviewing. So first, we'll start off with the address book hierarchy. And I wanted to give you guys a visual representation of the address book records and how they tie into the job setup process. So basically, before you can set up a job, you have to have a few other things within the JDE system. The baseline is your customer record. So the first thing that we want to get into the system is a C record, which ties into the customer in which you have signed a contract with. Once you have your customer record created and in the system, you then create a job site record, otherwise known as a CJ record. This represents the physical address in which you will be servicing for that customer. Please keep in mind that you can have multiple site addresses, and there should be one CJ record per site that you will be servicing, and this ties into each job that you will have to later on create. Once you have your customer and your job site in the system, you will then need to determine whether or not a project currently exists for that customer or whether a new project will need to be created for the job setup. Please keep in mind that the project should be one per contract, and you should utilize JDE to keep track of your projects so that we do not create duplicates for your customers. And also please note that projects cannot cross companies, so there should be one project per company even if it's a national contract. Once you have your customer, your job site, and your project determined, you can then create a job in JDE. Please note, as you can see on the graph here, that you should have one job per service line for that customer specifically. And we'll review that a little bit more in depth in a couple of slides. So here's an example. The customer being CPS Energy, located here in San Antonio. That will be the headquarters for CPS. And that will be the C record or the customer record in JDE, so who we have the contract with. From there, you can see that we have several sites, 131 of them, and there will be a specific job site address for each one of those addresses. So essentially, there are 131 CJ records in JDE for the customer CPS Energy. From there, you can see that we have one project designated for this customer. And if at any point there was a separate contract created or signed with CPS for a different service or what have you, another project would be created at that point in time. And then looking at the jobs, you can see that we have one for janitorial, one for landscape, and one for O&M. So there's different job setups and jobs for each service line for CPS Energy. So just a brief review. Before creating a job in JDE, step 1 is to create a customer record or a C record if it doesn't already exist. If it does, at the time of the job setup, you will just use the existing customer record number. Step 2 would then be to create a job site or a CJ record in JDE if one doesn't already exist. Optional is to create the CJ record at the time of the job setup. So you can do it one of two ways. For those of you that are familiar, you can create a CJ record in address book batch revisions or in job master staging at the time of the job setup. Step 3 is to determine if an existing project should be used or if a new project should be created. So whether or not you have a project existing for the customer that you've recently signed a contract with. And step 3, create the job in JDE in the Job Master Staging menu. And that completes creating, or the steps you need to complete before creating a job in JDE. So now getting to the actual job setup itself in Job Master Staging. We have several tabs involved in information that's needed in order to complete the setup. So what you see when you first create a job in JDE is your job header. And here's a brief preview and a screenshot of what that looks like for those of you who may or may not be familiar. And I'll review each one of these necessary and required fields. So starting with the job description. Users may enter the appropriate description for the job being created. So whatever you see best fit and appropriate. The district should then be selected, and it should of course fall under the, or you should choose the district in which the job will fall under. And then from there, you can either select an existing project number by typing that into the open box, or if there is not an existing project, you can simply check the Create Project box, which will then disable a certain tab in which you can enter the appropriate information to create that new project. Moving on, users should enter the address number of the physical job location where you see CJ record. This is similar to the project functionality. If a job requires a new address for its physical location, then Create CJ option may be checked, that little box there. And this disables the site number field and enables the Create CJ tab where you can enter the information needed. It's important to include the full address of the site location per USPS. You should include the +4 extension of the zip code, or else the job will be rejected. Now this is important because the tax code on the job is driven off of that +4 extension of the zip code. If there is not a +4 per UPS or USPS, please notate this under the Comments tab, which we will review in a few slides. After you've decided whether a CJ record should be created or if there's an existing one, you'll move on to the customer record or C record. Users should enter the address number of the customer site, so their headquarters or their corporate office. While the site number should reflect the actual address of the job, the customer number should reflect the home address of the customer. After you've completed all the fields within the job header, you'll move on to the Operations tab, which is just below the job header. And here is a brief preview of what that looks like. And I'll review the required fields here. So first you have the line of business. Users should choose an option that most accurately defines the type of work that will be performed on the job. And as I've mentioned earlier, if jobs have multiple tasks are multiple lines of business, for example, cleaning or engineering work, they should be split out into multiple jobs. Otherwise, or you could say one job per service line. From there, you'll choose the task type, and this field actually becomes active once you've already chosen your line of business. It more specifically defines the kind of work to be performed on the job than the line of business, and drives which billing type options are available for selection. The task model field becomes active once a line of business and task type have been chosen. It is the most specific definition of the work to be performed on the job and also determines which tasks employees may use to sign into their jobs. So it's very important to choose the correct fields here, as there are many other things later on down the line that drives it. Moving on, next you will have to choose the billing type. So this field determines the method of billing that is employed for the job. If a job is a non-billed job, it may be appropriate to choose unbilled as the billing type, or one of the project billing options such as project fixed, or project cost plus, or project square foot, or project other. Otherwise, your normal billing types will be available, such as fixed or square foot. Next, you'll choose the BU type, and this field designates the type of job being created, whether it be contract work, subcontractor work, or a one-time job. Now, as you see here, we have a new field, and it's called or named facility type. And it is in accordance with group policy, and it is used to calculate the productivity rates. And this field is now mandatory. It has been a part of the job staging process for quite some time, but it has recently become required. So you will not be able to move on, save, or process the job without entering this field. And to view the options here, if you just hover over the box, you will see a magnifying glass that we call the visual assist. If you click on it, it will provide you with the list of options that you have for the facility type. Please keep in mind this field should represent the type of facility that is being serviced, not to be confused with the type of work that your customer does. Next, you'll have to fill in the job start date, and this just basically indicates the first day that the job will be performed. Next, you have the contract end date and the job inactive date. Please keep in mind that these fields are not required. However, if a job is part of a contract and the end date is a part of the agreement, it may be entered in contract end date. Also, if you know that you know of the day that you will complete the last day of work for this customer, you can enter that in a job and active date field. Please keep in mind that whatever date you have entered, the job will be deactivated 45 days after that listed date. You can also come back after a job is created if you, a year or two later, know that this job will be lost, the account will be lost soon, and enter the appropriate date here, and the job will automatically inactivate later on, so that you don't have to worry about requesting that be done after it's too late. So continuing with the Operations tab, the next field that you'll be required to enter is the Pay group. This field selections are filtered by the new job's company. So the user should select the pay group that most accurately reflects the pay schedule of the employees on the new job. The next field is eligible for SupplyWorks EDI ordering. This field denotes whether or not a job uses SupplyWorks to order janitorial supplies. So please note that if this field is not populated with the letter Y, this job will not be eligible for the EDI process. Next will be the ship to field. Please note, this is a common question, but the CJ record that you have attached or assigned to the job that you're creating is set as the default address to where supplies should be shipped. This address field should be updated if a job does not ship to its default job site address. So once you've completed all of your fields on the Operations tab, you'll then click on the CJ Creation tab if you have not already used an existing one, and this is what the preview looks like, or that tab looks like. Just reviewing those fields quickly, we have, of course, the job site address record name, and this field is the name that will be associated with the CJ record that you're creating. It's common to use the same name as the job. And this is also known as the alpha name, so what the CJ record will be identified with in JDE. Next, you have your mailing name. This field should display the site's name as it would appear on a United States Postal Service letter. Can they be the same name? Yes. Just please make sure that if you are having something delivered there, invoices, shipping supplies, that it's a name that can be recognized by USPS. Next, we have client category. Users should populate this field with the most applicable primary use of the facility, i.e. education and healthcare, but please keep in mind this is somewhat similar to the facility type. Moving on to client type, which I've just reviewed. I apologize about that. The street address. This field should match the street address of the CJ Records mailing address. So please keep in mind that when you are creating the CJ record, it is an accurate physical street address per USPS. And this address or street address field is reserved specifically for that. The Get Address button that you see there allows users to specify various geographical attributes about the job site. So after clicking this button, users should search for records by entering an appropriate city or zip code. Additionally, if a +4 zip code is applicable to the site, that information should be entered in this section. So after you've completed your job site record information, you will then create a project if necessary. And here is a screenshot of what that tab looks like. And for the project description, the field user should enter the title, the name, or another defining feature for that project. And then once you've done that, you will need to choose a project level. So this field defines the scope of a project. If a project operates on a national scale, more than one company in other words, the code N should be chosen. If a project operates entirely within one company, the code C should be chosen. Next, you have your billing method, and this field designates how billing is handled for the new project. The default letter J is considered job-based billing and should be chosen when a project's jobs bill independently of one another. There's also the selection C, which stands for consolidated billing, and should be chosen when a project has one job that bills on behalf of all of the jobs within that project. So once you have completed your project tab, you'll then move on to the finance tab. And here is a screenshot of what it looks like. Please note that all finance fields are only editable at the F, D, and C steps. In other words, it cannot be touched at record entry. Rather, when the financial director or controller is approving it, or at corporate level, we can make any necessary adjustments. The labor accrual field is now populated based on the billing type selected for the job. So depending on what you enter back in that operations tab in that billing type field, the labor accrual will populate what is most appropriate. If a special labor accrual applies, this can be changed when it reaches FD or C step. So keep in mind the special labor accrual field is only editable and applicable if the labor accrual flag is tagged as the letter S. It allows jobs to accrue labor on a non-traditional basis as per the job site or line of business. So next you'll see work days or week. This field is non-editable unless the labor accrual is set to S, so unless it's set as special. The number of work days per week for a job can be assigned here. The default for most jobs should be 5 work days per week. On the other hand, with aviation jobs being an exception at 7 days per week. So next you'll see the box. It says billable with yes or no, and this checkbox indicates whether or not a job is billable for a project. Only one may be selected per project, so please keep that in mind. Next, you see current billable BU per project. This field is non-editable and displays the current billable job for the project. So next you see payroll cycle code, and this field is auto-populated based on the job's company and designates whether a job acknowledges a biweekly, weekly, or semi-monthly pay cycle. And the payroll cycle code is cleared if the labor accrual field is changed. The pay frequency, so this field is defaulted to blank. Biweekly payroll, but not be changed to weekly payroll in the FD or C step. Next you see HFM key account. The purpose of this field is to assist with monthly global financial reporting and is auto-populated based on the job's company. So after the Finance tab, you then reach the Comments tab. Please note that you can enter comments at record entry, so when the job is being created, when the job reaches the financial director, comments can also be added, and even corporate can add their own comments, which can all be reviewed at a later time. So users may enter any additional information about the job for yourself or for corporate or for FD. It should be reviewed at all steps and levels. If the job requires billable accounts to be set up for the job, a user should notate it here. Please keep in mind this is very important. We will not know, by we I mean corporate, we will not know whether a job needs these billable accounts unless you tell us here. And it is quite the process to back out the accounts that have already been added to the job and add the appropriate one. So it's very important that it's notated here by the time it reaches C-step. And of course, if the United States Postal Service address does not have a +4 zip code for the address that you've entered for that CJ record, this is where you should make that note or comment. That way you don't have a rejected job and we know that there's a reason that +4 zip code was not entered. So next you'll see the Hierarchy tab, and it's non-editable, it's purely informational, and it provides an inquirer with the geographic hierarchy of a job from the country of origin to the district in which it resides. So nothing that you guys really have to worry about at the time of the job setup. It kind of does it for you on the back end, and it's just informational. And next you have the History tab. This basically provides users with an audit trail of when and by whom the various steps of the job staging process was performed. Also, when you guys go in later and make changes to the jobs and it goes through the staging process all over again, it basically keeps track of what was originally a part of the job setup and what has changed. And that you can see here under the changes. Oh, sorry about that. So for example, oh my goodness, I apologize. Let me go backwards one slide. So you have the original value, the new value for each one of these fields that you see here. So now that your job is set up and it's been approved by the financial director, what do? You send an email to the operations support group, and the email is opsupport@us.issworld.com. Now, who does the team consist of? It consists of Christian Contreras, Beth Briones, Tiandra Raber, and myself, Jade Liao. So once an email has been sent, we basically just need a screenshot of which jobs you're asking to be approved, or the job name, something to help us flag which jobs you're looking to be completed and processed. So we will approve and process the job as long as it's set up correctly. If not, we'll have to reject the job and have you make any necessary corrections. But if the job looked great and we were able to complete the setup successfully, we will send you a confirmation email with an assigned job number. So after you've created a job in JDE, it is now in need of a job budget. And job budgets are updated in JDE by us, the OSG team. And I will review how to go about sending in budgets for new jobs and how to send in budgets for existing jobs. And important budget details that we will review are revenue details and labor details. And so once a budget's uploaded into JDE, the information basically is pulled over to Hubble and reflected in the monthly labor forecast and in all reporting tools that you see the OB or operating budget in. So this is kind of where it starts, where the numbers that you're seeing fall into. So starting from revenue, the basis of the job, right? So depending on the billing type of a job, there's certain details that are required in order to correctly budget for revenue. I'll review each one of those billing types and what information is required and what information is optional. So let's start with fixed revenue, and this is known as billing type FX. And basically the only required information here is your fixed monthly amount and your total janitorial square footage. Please keep in mind this should be your cleanable square footage. Now, if you have a service day job or billing type of SD, this will be revenue billed by the number of service days or days serviced. And the required information here will again be the total janitorial square footage, the service day revenue amount, and of course, how many days of each month do you service this building? Of course, if you have additional fixed monthly revenue on top of what you receive for your service days, then we can budget for that as well. That's optional. Now, if you have an attendance-based job or a billing type of A, which is revenue based per event or attendee, the required information is going to be your fixed revenue per event, and of course the number of events per month. Now, optional fields would be if there if part of the contract was a certain revenue amount per attendee per event, we can also enter that information. And in addition to that, we can also budget a labor percentage of revenue. But again, this is just dependent on the contract with that specific customer, but the required fields are number of days that are serviced, or I'm sorry, the number of events per month and the fixed revenue per event. Now, if you have a job that's billed based off of square footage, then our required fields are going to be, of course, the janitorial square footage of the building or this place that you're servicing, and of course the full occupancy price per foot, so 64 cents, and if you're cleaning 280,852 square feet, you multiply that and that produces our revenue. Now, additional and optional fields would be if there was a fixed amount in addition to the revenue received per square foot or a vacancy credit rate. Please keep in mind, if you provide us with a vacancy credit rate, then we are going to ask you for the vacancy square footage so that can calculate appropriately. Now, if you have any cost plus all jobs, otherwise known as billing type of Y, the required information, if you choose to budget for it, is of course the markup percentage for the below fields that you see here on this screenshot. So cost plus labor markup, non-worked, PTI, vacation benefits, etc. Please keep in mind, for any non-billable markup percentages, we can enter 999 for any of these fields. You just have to let us know. There's also cost plus wages only, and that's known as billing type FC. And the required field here would be the markup percentage for labor, and then, of course, the total janitorial square footage. So we've kind of reviewed all of the required revenue details for each billing type. In addition to that, if the job has OTJ revenue that is consistent or contractual, you do have two options and ways to budget for that work and that revenue, and that would be a fixed amount, so providing that revenue rate, and optional would be the labor percentage of that revenue, and over here to the right on that screenshot you see percentage of revenue. So you have fixed and percentage just depending on the contract, and please keep in mind if it's contractual or monthly, that's important information to include and let us know about that job. So we've gone through all of our revenue details for all billing types and for OTJ work, and I will review in just a few moments the process for getting that information into OSG. But now let's kind of transition to labor. And it's what most of you guys may or may not be involved in, but it's we receive a lot of our changes on labor within OSG pretty regularly. But what you're seeing here is what a weekly labor template looks like in JDE. And all the required fields are boxed in red. So whenever submitting a new budget for a new job, please keep in mind that in order to accurately budget for your labor, this is the information we're going to need. So we need to know the employee headcount, so how many people are working the job, whether or not the job is union or non-union. Please note, if it's a non-union job, there's nothing you need to provide us with. But if it is a union job, we will need you to provide the union code. We'll also need to know the hourly rate of the employee. And please keep in mind that we do not know employee names, and they are not entered anywhere on the labor budget. It's simply a head count. We will need to know the shift of the employee, whether they work night or whether they work day. And of course the task. Are they a custodian, a cleaning supervisor, a floor tech, and so on. We'll also need the weekly hours per employee. So do the employees work 20 hours per week, 40 hours per week, whatever, what have you. However, if you have 2 employees who receive the same pay rates and all work the same amount of weekly hours, these employees can be grouped on the same line. But keep in mind, all information must be the same for each of them, including the task, the frequency, whether or not they're hourly or salaried, etc. We'll also need to know, of course, hourly or salary, and if they're salaried, just let us know. We have to do a few additional steps for that. Nothing that you guys need to submit to us. We'll take care of it, but just let us know if they are salaried, and keep in mind that you will need to send us their hourly rate even though they are salaried in the system. And last but not least, we'll just need to know whether or not the employees receive holiday pay. So that concludes the weekly labor budget. Now, earlier when we were discussing billing types, I skipped over loaded rate because the revenue is actually calculated within the labor budget tab or portion of the budget. So for any loaded rate jobs, you submit all of the weekly labor budget details that we just reviewed in the previous slide. But in addition to that, we of course need to know what the billable hourly rate is. So what you bill the customer for that labor. And that will calculate the revenue for this job, and we'll have the labor for this job. Now, if you guys have any contractual periodic labor, we can also budget for that. And there are 3 different options. We can budget for annual work, monthly work, or quarterly work. And just depending on which one of those you choose or we budget for, there's certain required fields. Now, for each one of them, we will need to know the week of the month that it's occurring. So the first, second, or third, or fourth week of each month, just let us know. Now, if it's annual work, we'll also need to know which month of the year it occurs. If it's quarterly work, you'll just need to let us know which month of the quarter. So the first month of the first quarter, second month of the first quarter, third month of the first quarter. But other than that, it's very similar to the weekly labor budget details that we've just reviewed. So now that you guys, we've reviewed what you need before to set up a job, how to set up the job, and all the required information, and all the budget details that go into revenue and labor. Now let's kind of talk about budget changes and what you need to do to get those in. So talking about revenue details, of course you're going to email them to the OSG team at opsupport@us.issworld.com. But please keep in mind that any revenue changes, any changes in amount or service days or what have you, they should be approved by your financial director or controller. And in addition to that, we'll need you guys to provide us with the necessary details such as the job number and what exactly is changing. And I will preview a spreadsheet that can be used for labor. You will also email OSG, and any changes should be approved by the general manager or equivalent. So we also ask that you keep them copied and in the loop on these emails. And of course, we ask that you use an Excel spreadsheet for the purpose of getting in the information to us accurately and in a certain format so that we don't have to revert back to you guys for more information. Now, when using the Excel spreadsheet that I'll show you here from Hubble in just a moment, we ask you to highlight any changes that are made. and make any appropriate notes, so deleting or replacing, and I'll show you that in just one moment here. I'm just going to log into the monthly labor forecast as you guys would see it. So this is your home screen when reviewing the MLF, or monthly labor forecast. And once it loads, I'll just go into the variance tab and drill down from there. And what I really want to get to is your labor budget and just demonstrate how to export your existing labor budgets and how to go about any changes. And also, you may or may not be familiar or know that you can, whatever budgets you're viewing here in the monthly labor forecast, they are live, they're accurate. Any changes that OSG makes, you will see within 5 minutes, so it's reflecting real time. Seems to still be loading here. All right. Let's refresh it and see if that works. There we go. So you'll just go to your variance panel here and it'll bring up whatever access you have. Right now we'll just glance at Phoenix, and you're just going to drill down to summary labor by job or drill to job budgets. And so here you can see the tabs that we just reviewed in JDE. You have the job, the billing type, and everything we reviewed from head count all the way down to weekly hours per employee. So our recommendation and request for submitting any budget changes would be to utilize this report here, since it does come straight from JDE, and you just want to export it into Excel by clicking the 3 little dots here and choosing Save Excel. And just click download, and we'll open up that spreadsheet. You can enable editing and make any changes to your jobs. But this allows us to keep the same format and consistency when submitting budget changes. And we ask for any changes made, for example, a change in head count, that it be highlighted and notated to let us know what it is you guys are updating, or perhaps someone was hired. You can always add another line. That's no problem at all. Just copy the same information, whatever their pay rate, shift, and of course task code. Maybe it's another floor tech, and their hours. And so we're just going to make a little note here, add employee or recent hire, and we'll know to add them into the budget. We'll also know to change the head count on this specific line. Maybe you added someone else to the budget at $9 who's also has a cleaning other task. But basically, once your changes have been made, you will just share this via email and send to Ops Support, and we will make those budget changes for you. And of course, we will send you a confirmation email once it's done. And so please keep in mind, within 5 minutes, it calculates and it's reflected in Hubble. You can go to the same report we were just viewing and you'll see the changes. So please utilize Hubble. You have all the information you need regarding your labor. You can see your real-life timesheets from Blue Force, what the employees have been working up to 2 days ago, same for your actuals. So please utilize it, take advantage of that information, and please send us any changes as they're occurring. We'd like to make that a regular habit. So we're happy to make those changes. Please don't hesitate to send them to us. So now that we've covered all of today's points, what you need to do before creating a job in JDE, how to create it in JDE, and how to get those budgets in for new and existing jobs. So thank you all for joining me today, and this webinar will continue and be held once a month, and that will be every first Wednesday of each month. So if there are any changes or updates in this process, please join me. You can hear them there. If you have any questions or concerns, please email the OSG team. And please join our Mastering Blue Force, the weekly series webinars offered every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Central Time. Thank you guys, and have a wonderful rest of your day.